My wife asked for space like it meant nothing, so I quietly rebuilt my life, rewrote the rules, and let silence replace me without drama regret still. She said it like she was asking for salt. Not a divorce, not a separation, just space. Like I was crowding her oxygen. I was standing in the kitchen, holding the ceramic mug our grandson painted last Christmas, still warm in my palm. Claire stood by the sink, sleeves rolled up, half-heartedly rinsing a plate she never even touched during dinner. "I just need space and time. You understand, right?" she said, not meeting mine, like even looking at me would crack whatever script she was trying to follow. I did not answer right away because I had heard that tone before, not from her, but from clients back when I was running my own contracting crew. It was the same syrupy voice people used right before pulling out of a deal they had already signed off on, claiming unexpected life changes. The same voice that meant, "I am already halfway out the door. I just want you to nod so I do not feel guilty about it." So I nodded. "Of course," I said. "That is what you do with termites. You do not scream at them. You do not chase them with a hammer. You nod. Then call pest control when no one is looking." She left the room without another word, the plate still dripping in the sink. I looked at it for a long time, then down at the notebook I kept tucked behind the toaster. Black leather, spiral-bound, smelled like sawdust and regret. I had used it during my contracting years to jot down red flags. Clients who smiled too much, changed specifications mid-build, withheld checks. Claire had just made the list. Gentlemen, before I go further, do me one small favor. 98% of you listening to these stories never subscribe, and we are trying to hit our first real milestone, 10,000 subscribers. It might be a number on a screen, but to the team working late into the night making these stories hit hard, it is motivation. Now, back to Claire. She did not follow up that night. No pillow talk, no clarification. She just climbed into bed, scrolled her phone until midnight, then turned her back to me like I was not 3 feet away, breathing the same stale air. The next morning, she was already gone by the time I came down. No breakfast made, no coffee, just a note on the fridge that said, "Back later." Do not wait up. I did not. Instead, I started packing. Not the dramatic kind of packing. No suitcases, no boxes. I started small, subtle. My tool belt disappeared from the garage. My passport and license went into a fireproof case in the truck. Photos. I scanned the ones that mattered and slid the originals into the attic. I did not change the locks. I changed my access. Bank account. I opened a new one under just my name. Credit cards. I froze the shared one, citing potential fraudulent activity. She did not notice. Not right away. She was too busy rediscovering herself, posting filtered selfies captioned with inspirational quotes. "Sometimes you have to lose yourself to find peace." Her favorite. The irony did not even sting. It was textbook. She thought this was a chess match, but she did not realize I had stopped playing years ago. I was just biding time, waiting for her to make the first arrogant move. Because here is the thing. When a woman like Claire says space, she does not mean solitude. She means new attention, flotation. She means freedom without consequence. But the second she left that kitchen, I started building something new, not out of anger but out of clarity. The kind you get when you have lived long enough to know the difference between a phase and a goodbye, hiding behind polite language. By the end of the week, I was signed on to a short-term rental 3 states over, under a different last name. Cash payments, no forwarding address. The only person who knew was my son, and he did not ask questions, just gave me a look that said, "It is about damn time, Dad." Claire still had space. She just did not realize she was floating in it alone. The first thing to disappear was the DeWalt drill, the yellow one I had had since the Clinton administration. Claire did not notice. She never stepped foot in the garage unless she needed to throw something on a shelf she could not reach. Then went the miter saw. Then the wrench set. Then the Milwaukee charger I never let anyone touch. Claire still had not said anything about space again. No follow-up, no apologies, just silence. As if she assumed her vague request had frozen time. As if I would just go dormant until she figured out what mood she was in next. She came home from a brunch one Saturday, heels clicking across the hardwood, sunglasses still on indoors. She walked past the living room and paused. "My recliner is gone," she said, half laughing. I was in the kitchen measuring out coffee beans. "You said you needed space." "Yeah, not less furniture." I did not look up. It was mine. She did not answer. She just stood there blinking like a computer stuck on sleep mode. I made sure to leave breadcrumbs, but only the ones that led nowhere. A missing toolbox here, a drawer cleared out there. The kind of vanishing act that makes someone question their own memory. Was it always this quiet in here? Did he always keep his truck keys in that bowl? By Thursday, the truck itself was gone. Claire asked our son, Josh, during one of her half-hearted check-in calls. "Have you heard from your dad?" "He said he needed a break, too," Josh said, playing it perfectly flat. He did not say more than that. She tried to laugh again, but this time it cracked. "He is not answering his phone." Josh shrugged. It did not seem like he wanted to. She hung up after that. No more questions, just long pauses in her own house. Probably wondering why the air felt so still, why the fridge magnet calendar had not been updated, why the junk drawer did not have batteries anymore. Meanwhile, I was 3 states away. Small town, cheap rent, neighbors who did not ask questions. I signed the lease under Joseph L. Harper. Harper was my mother's maiden name. I paid 3 months in advance and asked for no mail, no packages. I even swapped SIM cards. My phone was a blank slate. No saved numbers, no cloud backups, just silence and space. Mine this time. In the evenings, I would walk by the lake sometimes with my grandson on speakerphone. We talked about fishing, about school, about how Grandma used to yell when he played with mashed potatoes. He laughed. I laughed. She never called him once. Her version of space did not include family. I visited a small local lawyer, too, just to get things rolling. Nothing aggressive, nothing loud, just careful paperwork and strategic filings, trust realignments, power of attorney discussions, contingencies. Claire still had no clue. She thought this was a standoff, that I would eventually return with my tail between my legs, asking how much space was enough. But what she did not understand, and what she had never bothered to learn, is that men like me do not bluff. We measure. We calculate. We do not slam doors. We remove them quietly and carry them out the back. And when we vanish, it is not with drama. It is with precision. Ghost protocol. Fully engaged. Claire always mistook silence for weakness. It started with little signals, those pathetic breadcrumbs she thought looked like independence, a new haircut, an overpriced scented candle habit, longer walks with her phone glued to her palm, and a carefully curated smirk on her lips. She was not mourning. She was performing. To her, I was still just sulking somewhere nearby, probably on the fishing dock, nursing a bruised ego, waiting for her to toss me a breadcrumb of affection so I could come crawling back with my tail between my legs. What she did not know, what she could not imagine, was that by the time she lit her first citrus bergamot for emotional clarity candle, I was watching the sun set over another horizon entirely. No bruises, no sulking, just me, our grandson, and the quiet. Claire's version of healing involved playing house with nostalgia. She started texting old colleagues, not the women, the men, the kind who used to give her a little too long of a hug at company parties, the kind who now replied with, "Hey, stranger," winking face. One of them, Mike, if I remember right, started stopping by. He had not just been in the neighborhood. The man lives 40 minutes away in a gated condo development, but now he was suddenly checking in on Claire, helping with light bulbs, offering to fix the porch light I had already rewired last year. I had always known Claire loved attention. But now that the steady current of being seen, really seen, was gone, she was desperate to generate it however she could. Then came the posts. Cryptic, cringeworthy, and worse, public. A selfie with her wine glass and a half-lit face. Sometimes you have to lose someone to find yourself. Another with a neighbor's cat on her lap, smirking into the camera, learning to enjoy life again, one purr at a time. Even her bio changed. It used to read wife, mother, gardener. Now it said, still standing, still learning, still fierce. It was like watching someone build a Pinterest board for their own midlife crisis. She did not text me, not once, not a call, not even a cheap, "Hope you are okay." Because again, Claire never reached down to anyone she thought was beneath her. Instead, she posted for strangers. But then one post caught more attention than she wanted. It was another, quote, white text over a forest background. Letting go does not mean giving up. It means choosing yourself. Below it, nestled in the comments under all her wine aunt friends going, "Yes, queen," was a single reply. You did not let go. You got replaced. Josh, our son, the same son who now lived with me. She deleted it within an hour, probably out of embarrassment, probably after calling him in a rage only for him to let it ring out. You see, she thought she had kept the kids in her corner. That blood guaranteed loyalty. That motherhood outranked memory. What she forgot was who taught Josh how to ride a bike, who sat at every parent-teacher conference, who spent 3 weekends retiling his bathroom when his landlord would not lift a finger. She might have carried him for 9 months, but I carried him through life. That comment hit her harder than any confrontation ever could because it was not sarcasm. It was not petty. It was surgical, clean, a line drawn in pixels. You lost more than you know. And by now, she was starting to feel it. Not just the absence of me, but the slow, gnawing realization that I was not sulking somewhere, waiting to be invited back. I was living without her, with people who knew the difference between space and exile. The lawyer's office smelled like printer toner and stale coffee. Nothing fancy, just a 2-story building with cracked leather chairs and a framed diploma that had faded slightly in the sun. My kind of place, quiet, efficient, no frills, no sympathy. Mr. Harper, the attorney said, using the name I had signed on the lease with. He was in his late 50s, glasses low on his nose, shuffling papers like a blackjack dealer who had seen it all. We reviewed everything line by line. Durable power of attorney, updated living will, healthcare proxy. I signed them all with the same pen I'd used to fill out contractor bids for 30 years. Muscle memory. Then came the trust. I had set most of it up years ago, but now it needed realignment. Everything Claire and I had built, houses, land, savings, even that beach rental we never used but still paid taxes on, it was all about to be retitled. Not out of spite, out of preservation. The attorney flipped to a page, paused, then looked at me. This clause, the emergency contact protocol. You want to name someone else besides your wife? I nodded and slid a sticky note across the table. On it, the full name, birth date, and number of my daughter-in-law, Elise. He raised an eyebrow. Not your son? She is sharper, I said, and Claire never respected her, which is exactly why she will be the first person Claire calls when the ship starts sinking. He grinned just slightly. Got it. The clause was simple. In the event of a medical emergency or death-related situation, all decisions about who gets notified and when would fall to Elise. If Claire needed to reach me in a moment of desperation, she would have to get past the woman she once called an opportunistic little girl with Pinterest goals. I remember the day she said it, Thanksgiving 3 years back. Elise had offered to help in the kitchen, and Claire had waved her off like a waiter at a cheap diner. Then muttered the insult to her sister while uncorking a $30 bottle of wine she did not pay for. Elise never said a word. She just smiled, packed up leftovers like nothing happened, and later thanked me for hosting. Claire always underestimated quiet women. She thought control came through volume, through dominance, through being the center of the photo. But Elise, she played the long game. Patient, observant, and now legally empowered. We went deeper. Revocable trust adjustments, digital assets redirection, medical directives filed with 3 local hospitals. Claire's name was removed from every contingency and survivorship clause. If I got hit by a truck tomorrow, she would not even get a voicemail unless Elise approved it. That afternoon, I walked out of that office feeling 20 pounds lighter. Not because I had taken something from Claire, but because I had returned something to myself. Control. It was not the kind that makes headlines. No screaming, no courtroom drama, just a paper trail with intention behind every line. While Claire was back home rehearsing her next Instagram quote about the power of forgiveness, I was quietly building a firewall between us that not even her crocodile tears could penetrate. She wanted space. She got it with concrete notarized walls and a guardian at the gate she could not sweet-talk her way past. Let her have her brunches. Let her flirt with the memory of men who used to send her heart emojis after happy hour. I had Elise, and Elise had the keys to a door Claire would never be able to knock on again. Not without someone else deciding whether it opened. Claire's voice had always had a certain pitch when she was lying, like she was trying to convince herself while entertaining everyone else. It was the same tone she used the time she burned a roast and insisted it was intentional Tuscan style. Now she used it for guests. She started hosting little wine and cheese gatherings, Tuesdays, Fridays, weekends if she felt up to it. The house was suddenly full of clinking glasses and middle-aged women with names like Sharon, Denise, and Tiff with 2 Fs. They sat on the patio I built with my own 2 hands, sipping Merlot I used to pay for, laughing just a little too hard at stories that were not funny. Claire would swirl her glass dramatically, eyes half-lidded with fake wisdom, and say things like, "Jack and I were just in different phases. You know, we have both grown, but we are being mature about it." Then she would smirk like she was letting them in on a secret. "He is probably somewhere sulking without me. Men do not cope well." What she did not know was that I was not sulking. I was grilling burgers with our grandson, and Elise had just helped me file a declaration of removal from the joint account. My deposits, pension, business dividends, and the proceeds from that beach rental I sold behind her back had all been redirected to my new trust. Claire found out the way all entitled people find out, when the card stopped working. It happened at a boutique home baker shop. She was trying to buy a $300 candle holder shaped like a flamingo. I wish I were joking. Declined, tried again, declined. She laughed nervously, saying something about chip errors. She tried a different card, declined again. Later that day, she opened the banking app. Her name was still there. The account was still called Clare and Jack Household, but there was only one deposit listed for $217. Her deposit. The freelance copywriting gig she took 3 years ago to stay sharp. The rest was gone. She stared at the screen, blinking. Then she dialed my number. It rang once, twice, then straight to voicemail. She texted, "Can we talk?" Nothing. She called again. This time, no ring at all. Just the cold wall of disconnection. But I did not ghost her completely. A few hours later, an email landed in her inbox from a secured sender. Subject line, Future Communications. It was 3 lines long. Claire, please route all inquiries through counsel. Best, J. No greeting, no emotion, just procedure. That email was not for information. It was for humiliation. She read it 3 times like she expected the subtext to appear if she stared hard enough. But there was not one. I had said exactly what needed to be said, and no more. The walls were closing in. She had spent weeks pretending I was licking my wounds somewhere, lost without her, just waiting to be called back like a loyal golden retriever. Now she was realizing something worse than anger. Indifference. That is what really broke people like Claire. Not fury, not fights, but paperwork filed in silence. Cards declined without warning. A phone that does not ring back. A man who did not disappear because he was weak, but because he had already finished the blueprint for the rest of his life. And she was not on the blueprint. The call came in just after noon on a Thursday. While Claire was setting up a charcuterie board for no one, her sister's voice trembled over the line. "Mom is in the hospital. It is a serious stroke. They think." The knife dropped from Claire's hand and clattered against the granite countertop. For a moment, her breath caught in her throat. Not because of the news, but because of the reflex. She needed Jack. Not emotionally, not romantically, but functionally. Because Jack was the one who handled emergencies. Jack booked flights. Jack called the right nurses. Jack asked the right questions in hospital hallways while everyone else was still trying to figure out which wing they were in. Claire fumbled for her phone, thumbs shaking over his contact. She dialed straight to voicemail again. Voicemail again. Nothing. She called their son, Josh. 4 rings, then voicemail. Her hands were clammy now. She muttered, "Come on, somebody pick up." Her voice cracked halfway through it. She tried Jack's number again, a 3rd time, then a 4th, then a 5th. She did not stop to breathe. The silence on the other end started to sound louder than static. And then finally, on the 7th try, someone answered. A woman. Not Claire's sister, not a nurse. Not Elise at first guess. Just a voice. Measured, clear. "This is Elise." Claire's mouth opened, but her words stumbled out like marbles on tile. I need to speak to Jack. It is important. It is about my mother, our family. She is in the hospital. He will want to know." A pause. Then the voice, still without a hint of urgency. Jack asked not to be disturbed. Claire blinked, almost confused. I said, "It is important. I understand. I will let him know if he decides to respond." Click. That was it. No gasps, no emotion, no room for begging or bargaining, just silence in a phone screen that now felt heavier than it should have. She stood there in the middle of the kitchen, the charcuterie board untouched, grapes starting to sweat in the summer heat. She stared at the tile Jack had laid himself 20 years ago. The one she once complained was too cold for bare feet. It felt like ice now. Claire had always relied on the emergency pull cord of marriage. No matter what, Jack would come running when it truly mattered. Because that is what men like him do. They forgive. They fix. They forget the insults once the crisis shows up at the door. But this time, that door did not open. It was barricaded by something she never believed existed in Jack. Resolve, real, quiet, and absolute. Jack was not ignoring her out of spite. He was simply gone, and someone else was standing between them now, and for the first time since she asked for space, she realized just how far that space went, Not just miles, not just silence. It had structure, voice, authority, and a name, Elise. Claire had dismissed her, talked over her, called her basic and naive. Now that same woman answered Jack's phone and decided what Claire was allowed to say. That was not rejection, it was replacement. And it came with no argument, just a click. Claire arrived at the hospital breathless, keys still in her hand, hair pulled back in a rush that did not hide the panic beneath her foundation. The woman at the front desk barely looked up as she scribbled down Claire's name on the visitor list. Room 208, I see you. Her mother's name was printed on the whiteboard in dry erase marker like a countdown clock. She pushed through double doors, heels clacking down the hall, past sterile walls and the quiet buzz of machines. Outside the room she paused, bracing herself for the inevitable flood of emotion. What she did not brace for was the person already inside. Josh, their son, sitting calmly beside the hospital bed, holding his grandmother's frail hand, lips moving as he quietly read a story out loud. Something about cardinals, something gentle. He looked older, more composed, and when he looked up and saw her, really saw her, it was not warmth in his eyes. It was distance. She stepped inside, voice small. Josh. He closed the book and stood, slow and deliberate. You wanted space, he said. There was no venom in it. Just a statement like reporting the weather. We respected it. Claire blinked. I did not mean from you, things were complicated, I needed time. He nodded once, lips pressed into a thin line. You had it. She looked at the second chair in the corner, folded and tucked behind an oxygen cart. Is Jack here? No, Josh said, her voice cracked, old panic bleeding through her syllables. I need to talk to him, please. He needs to know. Josh did not respond. Instead, he reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, tapped once, and handed it to her. Voicemail? Not just a voicemail. The voicemail. Claire raised it to her ear. Jack's voice filled the space, low and calm. Not angry, not cold, just done. Claire, you left. I did not chase. I built. Her knees buckled just slightly, but she gripped the railing of her mother's bed. Her mother, who now lay still and pale, unaware of the quiet avalanche crashing just feet away. The message continued. Everything you assumed was shared was not the accounts, not the decisions, not the future. There was a pause, not long, just enough to make her lean in, desperate. Take care of what is yours. I will do the same. Click. No goodbye, no signature, no crack in his voice, just a line in the sand drawn with surgical precision. Claire handed the phone back. Josh did not meet her eyes. She sat at the edge of the bed, trying to feel something she could use, grief, anger, entitlement, anything that would justify the growing knot in her chest. But all she felt was stillness, not the peaceful kind, the kind right before a building caves in. Because the truth she had refused to consider was now sitting in the chair across from her, arms folded, eyes tired. She had not taken space. She had been replaced, and no one, not her son, not Jack, not even the failing machines keeping her mother alive, was rushing to tell her otherwise. That chair beside the bed had been filled, and not one soul had saved her a seat. It arrived in the mail like any other envelope. No courier, no warning, no fanfare, just a simple white package slipped between a gardening catalog and an ad for replacement windows she would never request a quote for again. Claire did not open it right away. She stared at it for hours, letting it sit on the kitchen counter like a dare. Deep down, she already knew. This was not an invitation. It was not a lifeline. It was a verdict. When she finally sliced it open with the corner of a chipped credit card, 3 documents slid out with surgical precision. The first was cold, clinical, formal relinquishment of spousal rights. Jack had severed the last legal ties between them, not with drama, not with a lawyer at her door, just ink and finality, effective immediately. The second was sharper, a transfer of medical proxy. He had reassigned the authority to make life and death decisions for him, not to her, not even to Josh, but to Elise. Her name printed there, black on white, as the person who would speak for Jack if he could not speak for himself. The third item was handwritten. No letterhead, no signature block, just a yellowed piece of lined paper torn from a legal pad. 2 sentences. Claire, I did not vanish. I recalculated. Her knees nearly buckled, not from heartbreak, but from recognition. That handwriting, steady, firm, exact, was the same one that used to leave post-it notes on the fridge, reminding her to take vitamins. The same scrawl that used to sign anniversary cards with, "Still yours," only now the warmth was stripped away, replaced with surgical intent. She stood in the kitchen, surrounded by curated emptiness. The sofa no longer held his scent. His boots had not graced the doorway in weeks. Even the houseplants seemed less green without his habit of turning them toward the sun. Her fingers moved before her brain could object. She grabbed her phone, dialed his number again. This time, it did not go to voicemail. It rang once, twice. Then came the click. A voice answered, but not Jack. A child's voice. Young, bright, familiar. "Hello." Claire froze. Her breath caught. "Evan," she whispered. "Their grandson." His voice was warm, curious, totally unbothered. "Grandpa says, you do not get to talk anymore." She tried to speak, tried to form words, but the line was already dead. No goodbye. Just that small, devastating sentence spoken with all the innocence of a boy holding a fishing pole beside a man who no longer carried Claire's shadow. That was not cruelty. That was clarity. That was finality. Jack had not shouted. He had not slammed doors. He had not retaliated. He built a life that no longer included her, and taught the next generation that some bridges are not burned. They are simply never rebuilt. The legacy was sealed, and Claire, she was no longer part of the... Claire waited until the house was dark. Windows shut. Candles flickering down to nubs, wine untouched on the counter. The legal documents still sat where she dropped them earlier, curled at the corners like dead leaves. She stared at her phone for a full hour before dialing. The number was new, one she had pulled from an old email thread buried beneath logistics about taxes and vacation rentals. She had not used it yet. She had not dared. But now she needed to hear his voice. One more time. It rang twice, then connected, but it was not Jack. "Hello," said a voice, female, calm, unmistakable. "Elise," Claire rasped, her throat already tightening. A pause. "Then yes, I need to speak to Jack," Claire said, breathless. "Please, it is important." Another pause. Longer. This time something in Elise's tone shifted. Not unkind, not cruel, but firm. Grounded. "Jack is not yours to call anymore." Claire blinked. "Excuse me? He is with us now. He built this family and we show up." Claire's mouth opened, then closed. Her hand trembled. "I am still his wife," she snapped, trying to regain footing, trying to matter. There was a silence on the line so dense it felt like static. Then calmly, "You were, until you asked for space, and while you were busy trying to figure yourself out, he built something that did not include you." Claire gasped like she had been slapped. "This is my husband." "No," Elise said almost gently. "He was your habit. That is not the same thing." Claire's breath hitched. She felt the tears now. Not the performative kind, not the ones you use to win sympathy. These were raw, hot, real, but there was no comfort coming. Only Elise, steady, immovable. "You chose absence," she continued. "And Jack, he did not fill that space with revenge. He filled it with people who stay, who answer phones, who hold his hand when it matters. You created the vacancy. He just stopped waiting for you to come back." Claire tried to speak, but the words came out in fragments. I did not think he would actually go. I thought he would wait." Elise offered. "He did. For years, quietly, fully. And when he realized you were just keeping him as a placeholder, he built a new life. And this time he picked who gets to stay in it." Click. Call ended. No last word, no follow-up text, no open door, just a scream that went dark in her hand. Claire sat alone in the kitchen. The room around her suddenly too quiet, too clean, too empty. No laughter from down the hall. No footsteps. No one waiting in the living room recliner with a book open and tea cooling beside him. She was not abandoned. She was replaced. Erased so thoroughly that even her title, wife, no longer unlocked the door. She once asked for space, and now that space was filled, but not with her. It arrived in the mail like any other envelope. No courier, no warning, no fanfare. Just a simple white package slipped between a gardening catalog and an ad for replacement windows she would never request a quote for again. Claire did not open it right away. She stared at it for hours, letting it sit on the kitchen counter like a dare. Deep down, she already knew. This was not an invitation. It was not a lifeline. It was a verdict. When she finally sliced it open with the corner of a chipped credit card, 3 documents slid out with surgical precision. The first was cold, clinical, formal relinquishment of spousal rights. Jack had severed the last legal ties between them. Not with drama, not with a lawyer at her door, just ink and finality, effective immediately. The second was sharper, a transfer of medical proxy. He had reassigned the authority to make life and death decisions for him. Not to her, not even to Josh, but to Elise. Her name printed there, black on white, as the person who would speak for Jack if he could not speak for himself. The third item was handwritten. No letterhead, no signature block, just a yellowed piece of lined paper torn from a legal pad. 2 sentences. Claire, I did not vanish. I recalculated. J. Her knees nearly buckled. Not from heartbreak, but from recognition. That handwriting, steady, firm, exact, was the same one that used to leave post-it notes on the fridge, reminding her to take vitamins. The same scrawl that used to sign anniversary cards with, "Still yours." Only now the warmth was stripped away, replaced with surgical intent. She stood in the kitchen, surrounded by curated emptiness. The sofa no longer held his scent. His boots had not graced the doorway in weeks. Even the houseplants seemed less green without his habit of turning them toward the sun. Her fingers moved before her brain could object. She grabbed her phone, dialed his number again. This time, it did not go to voicemail. It rang once, twice. Then came the click. A voice answered, but not Jack. A child's voice. Young, bright, familiar. "Hello." Claire froze. Her breath caught. "Evan," she whispered. "Their grandson." His voice was warm, curious, totally unbothered. "Grandpa says, you do not get to talk anymore." She tried to speak, tried to form words, but the line was already dead. No goodbye, just that small, devastating sentence spoken with all the innocence of a boy holding a fishing pole beside a man who no longer carried Claire's shadow. That was not cruelty. That was clarity. That was finality. Jack had not shouted. He had not slammed doors. He had not retaliated. He built a life that no longer included her and taught the next generation that some bridges are not burned. They are simply never rebuilt. The legacy was sealed, and Claire, she was no longer part of the